My name is Josien Hoffs. I'm living in Rotterdam, in the Netherlands, and I've been a social worker in this city. And I started in the 70s as a social worker, and I have done that for almost 25 years. And of course, you see a lot in those 25 years. The city has changed a lot in this time, because in the 70s we had the first migrant families. And when you look at the situation now, and you see in the city of Rotterdam that more than half of the people beneath the age of 20, more than 50% is from migrant families. So the whole situation in the city has changed a lot. And sometimes you can see that it's an enrichment, and sometimes you see there are problems as well. Yeah. The thing is that I read an article. The thing is that we, maybe you know the term in Germany as well, expats, and these are people who are invited to come to the country and do something at universities or companies, etc. But we don't use the term expat for migrant workers. So, well, that makes you think. Well, after I finished my job as a social worker, I have been a social work teacher on what you in Germany call Hochschule, so University for Applied Sciences in English, and I've done that for 15 years, and I enjoy that very much, because you can imagine that young students are eager to hear from people with experience in social work itself. In the meantime, I was an active member of the Dutch Association of Social Workers. I've been for almost 15 years in the board of the association. And during my job as a teacher and as a member of the board of the association, I took an interest in international social work. And that's how, then visited countries, went to international conferences, etc. And after my retirement, I am voted in the executive committee of the International Federation Europe. And I'm doing that now for almost 3 years. And it is really interesting to see how different we are as social workers in all European countries, and at the same time how much we share.
What are exactly your tasks in the professional association?
Well, in the Netherlands, I've been a board member, and that was during my job, so I didn't have much time to do lots of other things. And of course, as a board member, you are involved in all kinds of national processes, like innovation in youth care and things like that. And in the meantime, we started a local branch of our national association in Rotterdam. We started that almost 20 years ago, and it's and I still work for them as a volunteer. And we focus on the city council, on all kind of measures in our city, the way social work develops or is hindered by the city council sometimes. And so we talk to a lot of social workers and try to hear what their wishes and needs are, and to address that to the city council. And well, that's very interesting to do. And of course, when we can share here the experiences, ideas, motivate each other, etc. So that is that I spend my time for a part at this local branch. And then you see, well, we always say think global and act local. And that's, well, this is in my situation, this is an ideal combination with my task in the International Federation of Social Workers Europe. And to be honest, it cost me some time to get used to all the ins and outs of an international federation, because it was, of course, I knew about it, I visited conferences, but how it is to be in the executive committee is quite something different. And there's always procedures and statements and agendas, etc. you have to get used to. So it took me some time to get used to that. But now I'm doing this for almost 3 years, and I'm feeling at home in this committee. And I'm busy with preparing documents and a webinar on eco-social work.
Oh.
And because of course this is a really, really important issue for today and the near future, because climate change will affect us all, whoever we are, wherever we are. And I think that social workers, maybe they have their own measures in their own house, but is it for them an issue to share with clients and groups they work for? And I think for a lot of social workers, that's a new idea. And what we see is with the energy transition, this will be a European thing, of course, that lots of measures are top down to the citizens, and they have lots of problems because it has to do with money, it has to do with housing, it has to do with ways of cooking, it has to do with high energy prices we have now. So I think you need social workers to assist people, to inform people, to help them to find means to have a say in what is coming to them.
Yeah.
So that's the subject I'm involved in at the moment.
Great. So I'm coming now to our theme. For the past 2 years, no other issue has preoccupied the world as much as the corona pandemic and its impact on society. So my question is, how do you feel, or how do you see a link between the pandemic and poverty in your country?
Well, what we see is, and I think that's not only in the Netherlands, but in a lot of other countries as well, is that the pandemic, of course, it affects us all, and we all can suffer from sickness and disease. But what happened in the pandemic and all the measures is for people in poor conditions is much worse than for some other people. When I see, I myself, I have a good house, I can go out for a walk whenever I want, I don't have children who are not going to school, etc. So in my situation, the pandemic is not nice, but it's not that big thing for me personally. But when you live in a small apartment with 3 or 4 children who cannot go to school, it's quite a different thing. So people have what you see is that for children, families with children, and families living in poor conditions, that the pandemic is much worse than for other people with better circumstances. So that's what we see, and the opportunities to get help are less in these times. Lots of social workers were only working from a screen. It's not the same as visiting people. Of course, you know that.
Yeah.
And not everyone has the possibilities to have a nice laptop and etc. and go on with all kind of platforms. So the means of communication are less for people in poor circumstances. So that's what we see, and some measures are helped some people, because there were measures to help homeless people. because of course it was a public health problem. So they didn't want anyone in the streets, and they opened a lot of shelters to support homeless people. And well, the question is, will these shelters stay open after the pandemic?
Do you have seen a difference between countries through your international work?
Well, of course, there's a huge difference between the state of the healthcare in countries. What you see in Western European countries, in the northern countries, the state of healthcare is quite good. But when you go to countries like Bulgaria, Romania, as an example, the healthcare situation is not that good, and so here everyone could get medical assistance if needed, even if you were poor. But in lots of countries, the accessibility of healthcare is much worse organized.
Yeah, that's true.
So that's a big difference we see. That is, and the position of social workers is of course very different in the different European countries.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have a kind of status, and sometimes you don't have anything, but you fulfill.
How has the pandemic affected the work as social worker in your country in any more ways?
Well, what we see is that social workers were quite upset about this digital work, because especially for those families with children, where difficulties are in raising the children, maybe domestic violence, etc. And you could not see with your own eyes what was happening in the families, because you only had your phone call or maybe some screen, some Skype, etc. And that's all. So you don't have a feel, you feel that something's going not well, or maybe even very wrong, and you can't do anything. So they felt they lost their some possibilities to help. So I know that's not okay that's happening, but help. How can I intervene, and how can I help people? So that's the thing we heard. And for youth workers, of course, everything was closed. So, well, where are these youngsters? We always meet in the streets and in our center, etc. And sometimes they were very creative, and they took their bike or their car and they went looking in the neighborhoods. Where are they? Where are they? Oh, well, and there was a parking lot, and you saw there a group of youngsters having a smoke, etc. And then they say, well, and then this lady the social worker took a thermos with tea and coffee, and she served them from her car and had a nice talk. So, well, we do not forget you. The means of contact are less, but we won't forget you. We will be here. This is my phone number. If anything's the matter, please call me. Even if you don't see me every day, I'm here for you. So they succeeded to do more work outreaching in a very special way.
Do you think we as a profession have learned something out of the pandemic?
One of the issues is, of course, that the pandemic affects us all. So even your grandmother may die of COVID. Even your neighbors are confined to the house for weeks and weeks, etc. Maybe you have children who cannot go to school. So it's not the pandemic is not only for your service users; it's for all of us. And that makes you think.
Yeah.
Because I am part of the society. I'm not someone sent there as an official to make things right. No, I'm part of it. So it makes you think about your own ethics. And so that is, I think that's very interesting. And that is what I see with the energy transition. It affects me as well as social worker. It's not only for them as service users. So it makes you think. And another thing is that, of course, we learned about digital relations, and it brought us something as well, because sometimes we can be much more efficient in this kind of digital communication. Less traveling, less hours of meetings, etc. So I think we must see our work more as hybrid in communication.
Yeah.
Physical when needed, and online when possible.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we learned and what we take with us.
Thank you for your time and for your time with us.
Thank you very much.